Bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Thanks for being here today. My name is Jess, Reia, and I'm going to chair this virtual roundtable, and I'd like to welcome you all to this discussion on the music scenes of Quebec in Montreal. I want to begin by acknowledging that McGill University is situated on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We recognize and respect the Kanien'kehá:ka as the traditional custodians of the lands and water on which we meet virtually today. And this event is part of the Montreal as seen by cities in which various Montrealers are invited to share their vision and passion from the metropolis in a casual setting and in a discussion format. So it's a unique opportunity for students at McGill and our community at McGill University to freely discuss with these Montreal creators who contribute so much to the city's development in so many ways. And the series is organized by the Quebec Studies Program, the Center for Interdisciplinary Research on Montreal, and the Quebec Studies Students Association of McGill University. So thank you. And these roundtables are open to all and offered for 5 or 6 times per year. And this is the first time we are doing this in a virtual setting, so welcome. And we gather here to discuss how the Montreal and Quebec music scenes are facing significant challenges. Some of them might be contextual, structural, or social, and we appreciate the insiders' perspective on these realities and challenges brought to us by our 4 very special guests that I'll name them and ask them to briefly introduce themselves afterwards. We have Clerel, singer and songwriter, Marie-Julie Desrochers, Director of Institutional Affairs and Research at l'Association québécoise de l'industrie du disque, du spectacle et de la vidéo. We have Dan Seligman, co-founder and artistic director of Pop Montreal. And we have Jean-Étienne Sheehy, music journalist and founder of Bonyenne, a digital music lab. And co-hosting today, we have also 2 special guests. Évalie Vallée is a minor in Quebec Studies and the member of the Quebec Studies Students Association at McGill. And Professor Will Straw, who is the professor of urban media studies in the Department of Art History and Communication Studies. And just before letting you all introduce yourselves, I would like to remind your audience that you can ask questions through the Q&A feature on Zoom. I'll be selecting some questions and asking to our panelists later. And again, thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to learn from all of you today. Thanks. Let's see. Will and Évalie, they want to start and let them introduce themselves. Is that okay?
Well, perhaps, yeah, we could ask each of the 4 panelists to just say a little bit about themselves. Is that okay? Jean-Étienne, do you want to start?
Yeah, my name is Jean-Étienne. I'm a music journalist, and I'm also a student at the master's level of musicology at Dalhousie University in Halifax. And I'm also the founder of Bonyenne, which was kind of my digital lab to have an outlet to discuss music while everyone was confined at home, and to find a way to still have music be present and be discussed.
Okay. Dan?
Hi, Dan Seligman. I'm the co-founder and creative director of Pop Montreal. Pop Montreal is entering its 19th edition this year under very particular circumstances. It's a multidisciplinary music-focused festival, 5 days, usually in mid to late September. Generally around 300 musical artists, and then we have films, panels, art shows, craft fair, and kids activities. I've also been working in the music industry for about 20 years on the music management front, and I've worked with several Montreal artists, including So-Called, Eve Jarvis, The Unicorns, Stars, and Besnard Lakes. So yeah, thanks for having me, and happy to be here.
Okay, Clerel? Turn off the mute.
Apologies. Hello, everyone. Bonjour. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Clerel, a singer-songwriter. I've been active in the Montreal scene since 2013, and I released last year my first EP. And when in the years leading up to that, I've been active in the scene. Just playing in the live scene with various bands and outfits. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and to be part of this panel of guests.
Okay, Marie-Julie?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Marie-Julie, and I work at ADISQ since 2004. I've been working in very many different departments at ADISQ, so collective promotion and also for the Gala de l'ADISQ. Then I've been in the regulatory affairs team, and after that in the entrepreneurial support team, which is more about continuous training. And I am now the Director of Institutional Affairs and Research. ADISQ is an association that exists since 42 years now. It represents the Quebec and then independent music companies, whether they have activities related to recorded music, live music, or music video. In the Institutional Affairs and Research team, so my team, our main goal is to make sure that public policies are kind of aligned with the needs and realities of the industry. So we talk a lot with government and we make intervention for the CRTC. In the research field, we monitor what is happening in the music industry in other markets. We work in collaboration with the Observatoire de la Culture des Communications du Québec, for example. We also do sometimes research projects on our own, for example, surveys about music consumption in Quebec. And we also make some partnerships with research group in universities or also with other groups in the cultural sectors to make collective research projects.
Okay. Évalie, do you want to ask the first questions?
Yes, so hi everyone, and thanks again for being here with us today. So I'll go ahead with the first question for you guys. So first, is there a language divide in Montreal music? So does music cross easily between French and English? And maybe the question can go to any of you, so you're free to go.
From my perspective, I think that's a bit of a simplistic question in terms of just dividing between like French and English. I think especially in Montreal, there's so many different cultural factors. And it's such a cosmopolitan city. There's different styles of music, especially, in 2020 with the way people consume and listen to music and make music. I mean, obviously, in a kind of more broad mainstream approach, then I think there are kind of two scenes, but I think like on the underground level, there's a lot more kind of intricacies and different elements that at play. So it's hard to say. Yeah, I wouldn't divide it neatly between the two major language categories.
If I may, I guess if I may go next. Sorry, I don't know how it's going to work to go from one panelist to another. But I guess I agree a little bit, at least from my perspective, with what Dan just said. In terms of it, Montreal is a city where there's just a lot of proximity between different cultures, and so from the playing side or from the listening side, in general, I personally have not observed a divide. And obviously, there are some genres that are more that are more based in a cultural identification, more traditional genres of music, and obviously they're part of like being able to appreciate and engage into those genres and those art forms. Those music styles is also like the belonging, the cultural belonging. But I will not categorize that in the majority personally. So I think it's a city where people are, I've observed people to be very open to hearing music from, you know, different cultures, different languages. Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, that just speaks, it's just a manifestation of the Montreal, at least as the society, the communities that that the people are trying to build here, I think.
And I think on my end, I'm coming at this from a bit of an outsider perspective because I'm from the East Coast of Canada. And for the longest time, one of the appeals and one of the things that drew me to the Montreal music scene was the fact that this meeting between Francophone and Anglophones was something that was so organic and just so present. And that's something that's not only very valuable, but I think it's something that needs to be celebrated as part of the identity of the music scene in the city.
Marie-Julie, unless you have an answer to that, I'll move to the next question. Okay. So in Quebec, we have a strong tradition of public support for the arts, including music. You know, the federal government and the Quebec government provide funding for various aspects of the music industries. The city supports certain things. In the context of North America broadly, this is maybe a little bit unusual. Let me ask you the question, what are the best things that governments can do right now to make sure that music scenes are healthy and that musicians can make a living? Are they doing the right things? Should they be doing more? Should they be doing different things? And maybe I'll start with you, Marie-Julie, because you work in an agency that deals with the government.
Yeah, well, right now, of course, with the COVID-19, we are facing like extremely huge challenges. So it's a complicated question for sure. One of the main things that we are asking at ADISQ since a really long time is modernization of the key laws in our sectors. So maybe I can shortly explain which law it is and what is their impact, because as you said, we have funding through the government, like money that comes through like grants or tax credit. But there are also the Copyright Act and the Broadcasting and Telecommunication Acts that are really important in our system. So the Copyright Act is the one through which artists, producers, and songwriters can receive royalties, for example. And it is also the act that regulates the private copy regime, which used to give a lot of money. I think it was around 400 million at one point, and now it's almost zero because the regime has never been adapted to the new technologies. So this is for the Copyright Act, and you also have the Broadcasting and Telecommunication Act. This act makes so we make sure that every broadcasting companies in Canada do support the production of content. So for example, radio stations, television stations, they have to contribute to the development of Canadian content. So they give part of their annual revenues, and also when you have transactions, they have to give percentage of the amount to the development of Canadian content. So it goes through organisms like Musique Action and Factor, which maybe you know. And this support is really important. It's a few million every year that goes directly to companies and also artists that, for example, auto producers through those organisms. And right now, companies like Spotify, they absolutely don't need to contribute to our system because they are not Canadian. So we are asking that those two laws, the Copyright Act and the Broadcasting and Telecommunication Act, be modernized to make sure that every player in the system contribute. So I think it's one really important thing right now. It was important before COVID-19. It only makes it more important now. And we have positive signals from Minister Guilbeault right now on this topic. And the other thing that needs absolutely to be done right now is to give extra money to the ecosystem. So I think that's a complicated matter right now, because government have to figure out how to better help the system. Every player is fragilized right now, and they have to see, for example, I know that venues in Montreal, they don't receive public money usually, and they receive some emergency funding. But also the producer, we received extra money right now in the emergency period, but we can already see that the effects of COVID-19 will last for a really long period. Though I think it's a real challenge to figure out how to support all those players, all this ecosystem over a long period of crisis, because even though there's some partial relaunch right now, we're really far from normal. And even when we will be back to normal, there will be challenges for a long period because of this kind of really.
I mean, we
long
see now
pause.
that the big record companies in the world, the majors, are making more money than they've ever made. Huge profits, but that's not, you suggest, trickling down to the artist. As well.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to mention that Quebec is really special on that matter, because I like to say it's a unique place in the world, because 95% of the production, we say 95%, but it's even more, is made by independent companies. Yeah. So the majors are not in our market, so it's totally different.
If I could just, without being nosy, ask the other three of you, Jean-Étienne, Clerel, and Dan, whether government support of various kinds has been important to what you do, maybe just briefly, and then I'll pass it back to Évalie.
I can jump in quickly. Yeah, definitely our festival wouldn't exist the way it does without various forms of government support. Federal, provincial, and municipal. So I think we're very lucky in Canada, in Quebec, Montreal, to be able to produce art and not be solely motivated by commercial factors. I think it allows us to take like artistic risks as producers, to build audiences more carefully. So I think, yeah, we're exceptionally lucky. And obviously right now, during the pandemic, I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like in the States trying to do what we're doing. We wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to try to produce shows and take risks and help support artists. So I think, you know, obviously there are some issues, especially on the recording side. I thought Marie-Julie brings up some, you know, it's more policy initiatives. I don't think too many artists feel it on the ground or aware of what's happening on the policy side, but I think it's incredibly important to be like taking on those battles and, you know, within the government system. Go after Spotify. Everyone will be happy.
Will do.
Sorry, so if I may also offer, I also do believe, so I do agree that in Canada in particular, we definitely, like Will noted, there does seem to be a higher consciousness as far as like publicly supporting the arts, you know, and I think in a general way, that is a good thing. Going forward, I think, you know, like, you know, if having more intention in terms of like actually, you know, accepting first, I mean, I believe it will start at accepting the fact that as, you know, musicians and people that create and make and perform music are inherently valuable because like there's a real value to what they bring through that. And I think once that is established, then that also just helps develop the consciousness beyond just, you know, it's not just supporting the arts, because the arts are actually giving us all, a very real reason to be alive and to do the very other important things we do in all the other industrial sectors and whatnot. So that, and also obviously, I think in terms from an artist perspective, in terms of a musician's perspective, for instance, something like ensuring that on the educational level, in terms of people that want to go into studying and learning about music or music adjacent professions, ensuring that they have access to the resources and inclusive spaces of learning, so that people don't feel like they're not allowed to progress within a certain field due to factors that should not have anything to do with them being able to play music and to perform. Beyond that, being intentional about creating spaces and opportunities within our communities, for artists of all calibers and of all types to exist and to perform. And it's so great. We do have a few amazing festivals in town, that we cherish. And I've also personally observed a lot of also like smaller initiatives taken by citizens that just, they want to foster that kind of they want to have music around. They're creating opportunities and occasions and spaces. So I'm observing that on a citizen level, that desire and that need and that want is there. So basically being able to help frame that from either municipal, governmental, federal, basically a public perspective, I think would also benefit the music scene as a whole. So not even just artists, but everybody that's involved in that scene in any way.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Étienne. Do you have anything to say about this?
Coming at this from the perspective of a music journalist, where music journalism is something that's kind of undergoing a long, painful, slow death, it kind of seems like there isn't really a political will to have arts journalism and arts reporting and just community journalism in the end be present. So on that level, there's really a big void, I think, and it'll require political will, it'll require public investment. It's also going to require, I think, a social conversation of, is arts reporting something we want to value as a society? Is arts criticism valuable? And how does it contribute to a healthy music scene as well? Because it does have a role to play in fostering the scenes and developing these identities and developing, developing artists as well. But I can't say that I feel like there is a lot of political support on that level, and not just for music journalism, but all journalism in general.
Very good point. Évalie, do you want to come in now?
Yes, with all your amazing answers, I'll go ahead with another question that I think goes with your answer, which is like the last question of our list. According to you, do you think since Quebec Music or Quebec Music application, so for those who doesn't know what's that, it's a new platform or application on your phones that you can download, which looks like Spotify, so it could be the competitor of Spotify here in Quebec. So since Quebec Music was launched earlier this year or in the summer, have you noticed a new wave of interest from Quebecers regarding Quebec's music? So it could be for any of you to answer. So I was wondering, which I think relates to the earlier questions that Dr. Straw asked. So go ahead.
It's interesting because I don't think that I've noticed a significant amount of interest due to kid music. One thing I did notice, and it's for many factors, it feels like local Quebec music has been more discussed, whether it's from people's initiatives to be seen and to be heard, whether it's from promotional campaigns that brought ads presenting artists such as the one of ADISQ actually, and also kid music. But I feel like all of these are just elements that can help to foster discussions, and I don't think that we can trace necessarily a rise in discussions on Quebec music just based on this application.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's also quite new because I think it was launched like earlier this summer. So I know the question is really like it goes fast with the events, but maybe Marie-Julie, you have Marie-Julie Desrochers, you have
Well, it is obviously really new. I don't have any numbers of about the number of users, etc. So I don't know how big the adoption is now, but I think we have to give it some time. Those things can take a few time. It's normal. You're asking people to change their habits, whether you're going after people who are not already in streaming or people who are already on another platform. But we made a press release when the service was born, and we are excited to see what will happen with that, because they really say that they have a strong will to put local content in en valeur. So I don't find the word right now, but they will put it in front. And so we always hope that services will believe in our content and give it some love, because it makes a difference when you propose the content and when you give it. So we hope it can inspire other platforms, and we hope also that it can success on the market.
Yeah, because we also are with COVID-19 situation in a new context of buying local, shopping local, places. So maybe, as you said, this new application or this new platform might be an incentive for people in Quebec to want to support local music without using Spotify. We never know. So Mr. Seligman, do you have an insight on this?
I don't have too much to say. I mean, I did notice when it was launched, and I noticed some colleagues and friends on social media kind of sharing the info about it. I mean, I tend to be pretty skeptical about this kind of thing, just because I don't think it reflects the way people are consuming music. I think people support a local scene in terms of live on an underground level, but I think the way people consume music digitally and on the, is it's much more varied and vast. And I think if you're limiting it to a specific kind of niche audience, you're kind of like, I don't think the 11 to 20-year-olds are like, oh, I'm going to go to Cub Music and like listen to the new Desjardins, like.
Yeah, but if I may, they have the exact same repertoire as the other services, though they have 40 million songs. It's just that they say that they will give more importance to the local content, but everything is local.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. It's hard. Like, I don't think it's like a bad thing per se. I just don't think it's necessarily in sync with like the majority of like younger, consumers of music. That's all.
Yeah, I totally understand and agree that we can have really different results with this new application. So maybe Dr. Straw, we can go ahead with another question. You're on mute, Mr. Straw.
I was going to ask our host, our chair, Jess, if she wanted to ask a question at this point, because I know there were some questions you had.
I think if you don't, we have a few questions from the audience, and maybe we can start with this. For example, Ludovic Rochon asked 2 brief questions. What are your suggestions for getting more visibility as to when releasing an album or EP? If you think SOCAN, SOPROQ, SOPROQ are associations worth being affiliated with? These are the 2 questions.
I guess I'm the one to answer this one. Yeah, so I think this is a really complicated question that will ask more time, but if I may, I invite you to look at our continuous training program, which is sometimes free or really cheap. It's like $25 for a training. So we have many training about those topics, about what can SOCAN and SOPROQ brings to an artist. It is more about like getting the royalties than getting visibility in this case, but we also have a continuous training on discoverability and how to make press relation and everything, because it's a really huge question. We always say at ADISQ, it's a reason why we have this kind of ecosystem, a complete industry. It's because we have many different expertise. So you usually need a team to really get visibility, someone who's taking care of the press relations, someone who's taking care of the platform, someone who's taking care of every aspect of the career. You can do it by yourself, but many steps need to be followed, I would say.
I notice on the chat, not in the questions, there's a comment that actually goes back to Jean-Étienne, some of the things you said about how music scenes need criticism and they need places for the criticism. And the James Johnson, the person who posts, talks about, you know, the golden age, maybe when the Village Voice, Bomb magazine in New York were places where important to talk about music took place. We used to have our free weekly cultural newspapers, the Mirror, Cote d'Ivoire, and so on. All of those have more or less disappeared. It's interesting that this person mentions that Pop Montreal is a place where not only do you have music, but you have discussion about music. And I know that's always one of the things that I've enjoyed about Pop Montreal is there's talk about music as well. There's debate about what it means. I wonder if, you know, if there's a scene in Montreal, does it have everything it needs to be a scene? Does it have the places where people talk about music? Does it have the places to play? Does it have the forms of support? Or is it operating, you know, in a big deficit vis-a-vis all of these things? A very open question, but we did want to know if you think there's something, if you were asked to characterize or define the Montreal music scenes at this point, what are some of the first things you'd say? I'll throw it open to any of you. Maybe Dan, since you're so deeply rooted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm assuming that, like, you know, back in the glory days of the Village Voice in New York, there was someone who was criticizing the contemporary climate of like the East Village at the time, saying, oh, well, back in like Kerouac's day, and, you know, or whatever. So I think there'll always be that kind of nostalgic look at the past. Unfortunately, you know, things have changed for better or worse, like the way, you know, the way music journalism exists, the way we cover music, the way we listen to music, all of these things have changed. So that being said, is there is it more difficult? 100%. I mean, I don't know if there's like a cure-all for what's happening in terms of the modern context. It would be great if there was like one place where you would go to find out the latest release, but you know, no, I don't even think that exists on the internet anymore. I don't, like, Pitchfork used to be the kind of like beacon of like independent new music, but no one, like, it was sold to a big corporation and doesn't have that same kind of it doesn't carry that same weight as it did before. So you know, I know Pan Am just started in Montreal, which is an interesting new kind of multimedia journal started by Alain Brunet and a couple other people. So you know, I think it'll take more than Pop Montreal, more than Voir, more than Cult. Like, I think, you know, for a scene to thrive, I think it takes different factors and different people. And, you know, I know we're going through a very difficult time right now, but I think we're lucky in Quebec to have the resources and support and institutions even like McGill or UQAM or, you know, that are kind of questioning these things. So hopefully people will continue to engage. That's the most important thing.
Maybe
and I also, if I
ahead.
may, I also think that a lot of it has to do with the fact, and we've discussed this briefly, but there's just more and more niches. And as someone pointed out on the chat, there's a Hip Hop Quebec website, and it mostly targets a specific francophone scene in hip hop. And I feel like the more niches you have, the more people will just go online to find their own niche. And that's where they'll get their information. It just means that you don't necessarily have easy access to those other niches if you're not out looking for them.
Marie-Julie, what's good and bad about Montreal's music scenes?
What's good and bad? I only have good things to say about the Montreal music scene. No, but really, I mean, at ADISQ, I really don't really have an official opinion on it, but yeah, we like all the music at ADISQ. That's really our role. That's how we work. That's how we do promotion. It's always collective promotion, and yeah.
Okay, Évalie?
Sorry. So I can go with the new question on a completely other subject. So I'll go with this. So how easy it is for immigrant performers, musicians, or creators to integrate into the Montreal and Quebec music scenes? Based on your own experience, how challenging it is for women or for Indigenous performers to find work, be active. So yes. So maybe for you, Clerel, as a songwriter and a singer, how can you see that?
Yes, it has been my experience that, you know, if you're personable, essentially, like because I think most connections in the music scene in terms of between musicians are made first on a personal level, right? So if you're a personable person, if you can hold a conversation and you're generally a decent person to be around, then you have just as much, you know, opportunity as anybody to kind of meet other people that are into the same things that you are, maybe start a project or get booked somewhere. I obviously cannot really speak for on the woman or Indigenous perspective, but like from my perspective as an immigrant, you know, that was definitely, it was my experience that, you know, people, you know, connected first on a personal level. And I've observed that as well. I mean, even with me meeting other people too, you know, that's kind of how it works. And obviously musicians, you know, they get into the same sort of activities, you know, they go to the same jam events, you know, or they go to each other's shows. And that's kind of where that those connections, I guess, are fostered and made and nurtured. And so I would say that from my perspective anyways, I would say that it's definitely does not feel like it's a difficult thing to get into, like, because there's also so many different communities that are part of it, so many different groups of people, and I observe that here in Montreal. From my perspective, a lot of the artists that I know are also people that are whose art is very aligned with, you know, their personal belief and their personal ideology of how to go about, you know, and pretty much everything in life. So I feel like that's where it starts for a lot of people as well.
Thanks, really, really interesting. Maybe Mrs. Desrochers, so from the point of view from the ADISQ, so how can you see that?
Well, I will not be so comfortable to talk instead of the people concerned by this topic. I know that it is an ongoing conversation right now with everything. So this summer in the music industry, we were hit quite hard with the harcèlement and the power abuse in the industry. So we are thinking about all that. We want to do some actions on that topic and on all the topics, but it takes time. I think we have to do things properly. We have a new Felix for the gala, which is for the Indigenous Artist of the Year. So we had it for the first time last year. It's a prize that we built in collaboration with the communities. So it was a long work. And I think it is important that we do that this way. We talk with the people, we understand what they want, how they want it to be done. So for example, at ADISQ, usually you have to make music in French to receive a prize, except in the category of the English music. But for the Indigenous Artist of the Year, we made an exception. So music can be in English, because they said if you don't do that, it's not worth it, because most of the people in the community sing in other languages. So that's how we work. We also make some conferences sometimes. So 2 years ago, we made a conference to hear people from diversity about how they perceive the space they have in traditional media. it was really, really interesting to hear them. And there was some issues also about how the training, continuous training function, that for musicians who learn instruments, for example, in Africa, they cannot like do continuous training here with experts, real experts in their domain, etc. So I think this is a really huge topic. It's really interesting, and we have to address those situations, but to do it one step at a time.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you did it with the community, the various indigenous communities, because it's only them who know how they want to be represented, how they want to be seen on example for here the music scene. So I think it's amazing. So Mr. Sheehy or Seligman, do you have any insight on your parts?
I would just add that I think it's important for the people in the industry to go beyond tokenizing and just really engage with the voices from different communities. I mean, for me as a programmer and fan of music, I've always just felt that there's so much music in the world, there's so many different voices, it would be incredibly, to me, boring to just listen to one style of music from one type of person. So I think I think we, like as programmers, as institutions, we need to really challenge ourselves to listen to different voices and to take direction from people in racialized communities, or women, immigrants, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the most important thing, I believe. Oh,
yeah. So maybe Mr. Dr. Straw, we can go with the next question.
Sure. I mean, I'm looking at the questions we prepared. Many of them we've often gone over. I guess I have a question, and it's getting back to Montreal. I mean, Montrealers love to say that we are, one of the most cultural cities in the world, that we're more into culture than anybody in the rest of Canada, and so on. But every so often somebody does a study that shows, well, actually people in Toronto go just as much to cultural events or spend just as much. Do you think that there are myths about Montreal, and and about how cultural it is? And do you think those are true? Is Montreal a more cultural friendly city? Or is it just our vanity that leads us to think that? Especially if you've traveled around to other places and performed or anything like that.
Maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But the thing that I know is that even as someone who's not a born and raised Montrealer, I get definitely more excited about the musical output of this city and this province than I do of the musical output of many other Canadian and North American cities. There's just, maybe the myth is part of what makes it exciting, but I remembered last year when I went to my first Pop Montreal concert, I was genuinely excited because I had heard so much about it. But there's other festivals that I've been to where I wasn't as excited when I showed up. So the myth contributes to making this an exciting place to be in. And if that's the case, then that's good.
I would say,
wants to comment on this.
Sorry, my bad. I would say that, again, on the citizen or the community level, I believe it has been my experience that, yes, Montreal has this in particular, that not only there are, several different cultures, but they also interact often with each other. Yeah. People from different cultures actually spend a lot of time with each other in official or very, just hanging out, as human beings in various ways. And I think that to me is what is really the particular thing, more so than just a plurality of cultures.
So, okay, so that's interesting. So you think there is more exchange across groups in Montreal than other places you might have?
Yes. So which means that here, and obviously, I believe more than compared to other places that I've personally lived in, or been in, including the States. But here, yes, when people go, they are aware of things that they may not, that they may not consider parts of their own particular cultures, they're aware that those can be very real in other people in the same communities as them. So they're not picturing it as something necessarily that comes from like away, but it's different from what they're, what they're used to. And I think because of that, that also affects, the output also, the cultural, the music output, because we have a lot of people here. I feel like personally, a lot of the people that I know in Montreal, a lot of the musicians that I spend a lot of time with are also people that come from elsewhere, everybody has some kind of cultural particularity, based on like, where their parents or grandparents or beyond came from. And so because of that, that affects what comes out as well, and I know I was experiencing some issues earlier with my connection. So I don't know if you already went over the part, the question about the genres, and how some of the genres are kind of can seem overrepresented when we look at, the sort of like popular media world in Quebec. But in fact, a lot of us, and I just mean a lot of us in the city and just people, have grown up listening to a lot of things, a lot of us spend a lot of time listening to a lot of things, which is not always the reality in what's reflected based on the output that we see.
Well, I don't want to ask a second question, but that issue is people would say, well, Francophone, Anglos would often say Francophone music, it's too chanson, too song-oriented. They don't know how to do rock. I'm just repeating it.
Wow.
Montreal's too into dance music, disco, house. They don't know how to do rock. There are various myths and so on that have circulated about what genres work here and don't. I'm sorry, Évalie, I'm stealing your time, but anything to say about that?
Honestly, I believe as individuals we like different things, and we're allowed to like more than one thing. And individuals might have perceptions about what certain artists in Montreal are doing but I don't know that it's really something. I personally would really I would need a little more in terms of data to be able to have any kind of blanket statements like that made about artists out of a whole scene. You know what I mean? I was in banter, in friendly rivalries and whatnot. That's one thing, but I personally, I listen to different kinds of music, and I don't think in saying that, I'm being a very, there's nothing really special about it. I think that's the case for most of us. We listen to a lot of different things. We like different things, and within different genres, we like specific artists more than we like others too, right? That's just normal. And so yes, and I think, we do know that in Montreal, for anybody, and I think that's most of the people on this panel that has, a certain awareness of what the scene is like here. I think we know that, we have an awareness that in Montreal, we have, just different styles. I don't personally think of Montreal as being proprietary or not being very good at certain styles versus others. I guess, you're always taking an artist based on what they're offering, based on whether you're able to connect to what they do, right?
Okay. Évalie?
Yes, so maybe we have only a few minutes, so I'll ask a question from the public that really is interesting, from Cal Nowak. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. So he said, Dan Seligman mentioned help from the municipal level to make festivals happen. How has the municipal government shaped where performances take place? Are there places where you've wanted to hold a festival but met resistance from the government? Do they encourage music performances in certain places in the city and not in others? So Mr. Seligman.
Okay, I'm just looking over the. So there is an organization within the city called the Bureau des Festivals et Événements. So there's an office at the city that specifically deals with music festivals and special events. And so as an organization, we can contact them for help with permits, for all the different circumstances that go into putting on a public event and doing it in certain locations. So yes, those institutions can be helpful. When we first started Pop Montreal, we kind of were flying by the seat of our pants. First couple of years, we were doing things kind of illegally, illegal lock parties, no permits, selling alcohol. And then we became in year 3, we became a nonprofit organization, but we wanted to kind of keep the initial spirit and vibe of the festival for doing kind of like being connected to the underground, doing events in alternative spaces. And so that organization was very helpful in getting permits to do shows in church basements, in like one of the venues we used in the past, the Ukrainian Federation. We work with the city, who connects us with the fire department, et cetera, to kind of get those permits. So that can be very, very helpful. Obviously, there are logistical issues and things that have happened where we weren't able to do things in the past. But in that sense, yeah, it can be. I think that answers your question. What else was I going to say? Yeah, I think that's it.
No, thanks. That's a really good answer. So maybe Mr. Strahl, can I go with another question? So maybe to close the discussion. So for everybody, so Madame Desrochers, Mr. Seligman, Mr. Sheehy, and Clerel. So if you had to pick one current key challenge that the Montreal and Quebec music scenes are facing right now, what should it be, according to you? So.
Yes, I can go first. I mean, it might a little be simpler, but I think Marie-Julie might have alluded to it earlier. But I think we've heard more and more, we're hearing more and more vocal reports, about women not feeling, included or safe in certain spaces in our music scene, and that includes, it could be the venues, it could be in the wherever the decisions are being made as far as booking and things like that. So I believe, yeah, that's probably one of the things that would lead to a lot of improvements in a lot of other areas as well. But that's if I had to identify one, that would be one.
Yes, perfect. Maybe Madame Desrochers?
So I totally agree, and I don't want to minimize that, but I will say something else. So I mentioned at the beginning the revision, modernization of the Broadcasting Act. It is really crucial for us. So if I want to add a complement to that, we can say that what we have to do is to make the digital scene more viable for everybody in the ecosystem. So how do we do that? So legislative modernization are one thing that needs to be done. But I think to conclude this panel, I will also be happy to talk about the metadata and things that the industry itself can make to make it more valuable. So we are working already, so at ADISQ and with 8 other organizations in music, on a project that is called Meta Music, and which aims to improve the metadata for the recorded music. And I think in the coming years, we will see also that there's a lack in our metadata for the live sector. So we feel it already. It's difficult to take the measure of the relaunch right now. How can we know what is happening? So I've seen different research groups trying to monitor it like by hands. So we are facing a kind of challenge on the industrial way. We have to improve the way we document and promote and make our digital product discoverable.
Yeah, really interesting. And Mr. Sheehy, maybe for your part.
I also think that another challenge that we could bring up is how do we make sure that our local content is heard and visible amongst an ocean of other productions from around the world, and how do we make sure that there is an access to that and that it doesn't get lost based on algorithms and based on all of these things. So how can we exist and be alive and well and healthy online, maybe?
Yeah, and Mr. Seligman?
Well, I'd love to see, you know, some industry organizations kind of take up the fight for universal basic income, especially right now within the context of COVID, which I think would go a long way in supporting artists' careers and just basic sanity and ability to live. And, you know, beyond that, I do like, I mean, it's been such an intense several months of like introspection on what's happening within the industry. But to be honest, these conversations have been trying to start for many, many years in terms of equity and recognition of cultural diversity and truly like representing what's happening in the cultural sphere from, you know, beyond just like the majority culture. So I think that's, you know, I think everyone involved in the music community and industry needs to listen to marginalized voices and put marginalized voices in positions of power and give people the ability to kind of represent what's really happening in Montreal, which is one of the most diverse cities in the world, for sure.
Thanks to you all for your answers. That was amazing. So I don't know, maybe Jessica, you want to close the discussion?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for your time, your experiences, your knowledge. Thanks for sharing all this with us. I'm sure we all enjoyed it very much. I don't know, do you want to say something else, Évalie? Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everybody who's watching us everywhere. I really appreciate it. It's being recorded. It's going to be available somewhere that I'm not sure about, but thank you. And yes, bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.